German pianist and composer, also known, according to Victor Hugo, as the deaf who could hear the infinite, one of the most distinguished musicians of the classical era and the pioneer who opened the road to the Romanticism, this is no other than Ludwig van Beethoven. By delivering the very quintessence of his art, Beethoven remains one of the pillars of the universal music today. However, upset by a world that despises religion, he turned away from the music that is aimed solely for the enchantment of the ear to think of the hymn of all nations, the hymn of joy, a masterpiece of deeper inspiration, speaking to the soul in the aim of awakening religious values and feelings of humanity, fraternity, and love. This is Sarah Mallah, and in this presentation, I'll be talking about Ludwig van Beethoven. Beethoven was born in Bonn, Germany. However, there isn't any proof to exactly when he was born, but a lot of sources agree that he was born on the 17th of December 1770. The top picture shows us a stamp that was printed in the General Federal Republic showing Beethoven's house in Bonn in 1987. Beethoven's house today is considered a memorial site as well as a museum and a cultural institution that was founded in 1889 by the Beethoven House Association. It mainly portrays the life and the work of this composer and provides a new approach to experiencing Beethoven as an artist and a human being in a more modernized and inspiring way. In his early childhood, Beethoven showed a remarkable aptitude for music that was eventually started with his father, who was unfortunately a chronic alcoholic, who started formal instruction of him by the age of 5 years old. Musical education was thereafter supplemented by organists Giel van den Eyden and Christian Nefi, who also taught him keyboard, and Franz Rovantini, who taught him how to play the violin and viola. However, Beethoven's lessons at first were described as very harsh and intensive. By the age of 13, Beethoven wrote his first ever published work and his very first three piano sonatas that were dedicated to Elector Maximilian Friedrich, who encouraged and supported his musical education. Later on, he wrote and submitted a petition for a paid position as an assistant for the church organist, given that his father was severely alcoholic at this stage and he was not able to support proper support for his family and brothers. And luckily, he got the job. At the age of 16, Beethoven left Bonn briefly. He traveled to Vienna for the first time ever, probably in the hopes of meeting Mozart. On his arrival there, Beethoven auditioned for Mozart, and the great composer said, "Keep your eyes on him. Someday he will give the world something to talk about." And definitely he did. However, after only 2 weeks of his moving to Vienna, Beethoven's mother became severely ill, and this what actually prompted him to return back to Bonn. She then died shortly, leaving the care of Beethoven's two younger brothers to him. And after the death of his mother, Beethoven's father, he moved more deeply into alcoholism, especially leaving the support and the care of Beethoven's two younger brothers to the 16-year-old pianist. Then, Beethoven was noticed by Count Ferdinand von Waldstein, who became the financial supporter and a very close friend of Beethoven. From the ages of 19 to 21, he supported all of his works that became more dramatic and more mature, especially with his maturity. And at this time, this is when he wrote the Emperor cantatas. Unfortunately, they were not performed at that time up until 90 years later. Sometime later in December of 1790, Haydn and Beethoven met, and it seems that they have discussed the possibility of Haydn moving to Vienna to study with him at a later stage. Shortly after moving to Vienna to study with Mozart, Mozart died. Therefore, Beethoven began studying counterpoint with Haydn, violin with Ignaz Stupanzia, and some Italian vocal composition with Antonio Salieri. Then Beethoven furthered his counterpoint instructions with Johann Albertsberger and many others. With Beethoven's monetary support ending soon, several Viennese noblemen wanted to support and fund his work, that were characterized primarily by Prince Karl Lichnowsky, who was very aware of the importance of Beethoven's musical powers and capabilities. Therefore, at this time, eventually, Beethoven's fame had started to grow, and he was frequently invited to the homes of a lot of noblemen, where he performed for them, and especially his compositions that were regularly published at this time. At the age of 24, Beethoven had his first public performance, where he included one of his very piano concertos. Shortly thereafter, he arranged for the publication of his first opus, the three piano trios that were definitely dedicated for Prince Karl Lichnowsky. A deaf who could hear the infinite. Well, between 1798 and 1800, Beethoven became aware of advanced hearing loss. However, his compositions, publications, income were steadily increasing at this level. It is important to note that in a letter to a friend later, Beethoven writes that he has fallen in love with Giulietta Guiccardi, but that marriage was out of the question given their difference in classes, given that she was the daughter of a nobleman. He later then decided to dedicate his famous Moonlight Sonata No. 14 to her. Also, Archduke Rudolf Habsburg offered significant financial support to Beethoven at this time, and they became really good friends. 14 of Beethoven's work were dedicated to Rudolf, including the very famous Archduke Trio, Missa Solemnis, and so much more. Progressive hearing loss resulted in his not being able to keep any more with conversations and his performances. However, he continued to teach only very few of his students, including Karl Czerny, who later offered the premiere performance of Beethoven's fifth piano concerto, The Emperor. But there was a slight change in his musical style that was noticed at this level, and it was noticed by Czerny. Beethoven claimed that I am not satisfied with the work I have done so far. From now on, I will intend to take on a new way. The coming work then took on a very grand scale, the first of which was his third symphony called Heroica. Despite severe illness, Beethoven continued to create masterpiece after masterpiece. However, during this time, and through devastating exacerbations of his chronic illnesses, his Ninth Symphony and late quartets were composed. Beethoven suffered during the winter month of 1826 through his death on the 26th of March 1827. Beethoven's greatest work and achievements in the history of music is the Ninth Symphony in D minor. That was the first example of using voices in a symphony. 4 vocal soloists and a chorus performed in its fourth movement, the Ode to Joy, a poem written by Friedrich Schiller. In the following slide, there will be a small excerpt from the Ninth Symphony performed by the Berliner Philharmoniker. Beethoven's major compositions include 9 symphonies, 5 piano concerti, one and only one violin concerto, and a triple concerto for a cello, violin, and piano, 32 piano sonatas, 10 violin and 5 cello sonatas, one opera, 3 masses, 16 string quartets, and many other chamber works. 193 years after Beethoven's death, 2020 is considered, or actually was considered, the Beethoven year, commemorating his 250th anniversary. However, with the global pandemic and the COVID-19, a lot of concerts and a lot of festivals that dedicated their seasons to the work of Beethoven has been cancelled. Nonetheless, Beethoven's compositions do remind me of the greatness and potential that lies in every individual, as well as emphasizes the power of mankind, will, and endeavor. Beethoven's music is indeed revolutionary. Thank you for watching, and I hope you liked the presentation.